I'm Ashlyn, and I'll be talking about some of the conservative side of religious freedom. In the 1963 case, Sherbert v. Verner had introduced the Sherbert test. The government must show that burdening the individual's practice of religion is based on the compelling state interest. This is conservative because it lets people keep their religious rights without becoming a burden to the law. In 1971, the Lemon v. Kurtzman ruling established an influential precedent, the lemon test, for whether a law violates the establishment clause of the First Amendment. This is conservative because it preserves tradition.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I'll be saying some of the liberal events of religious freedom. In 1960, John Kennedy became President of the United States despite being Roman Catholic. This was considered liberal because it changed up for acceptance of anyone no matter what their religion was. In 1980, Marjorie Matthews was elected bishop in the United Methodist Church and was considered to be the first woman elected bishop of any mainline Christian church. This event is liberal because of the change in leadership that was eager to elect anyone in a church, whether they were male or female. In 2012, Mitt Romney became the first woman nominee for president. This is liberal because of how much it changed people's perspectives of who can run for president based off of their religion. Now we move on to Halim.
I'm Halim, and I will be talking about the evolution of civil rights over the past 50 years. African Americans have come a long way over the last few decades, and since the 1960s, people have gradually become more liberal for African American civil rights and grown more accepting of them. In 1960, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, was founded. This group helped give young blacks more of a voice in the civil rights movement. This is liberal because the group gave the suppressed minority group a chance to speak for themselves. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Loving v. Virginia declared laws prohibiting interracial marriage are unconstitutional. This is liberal because the decision got rid of a law that interfered with basic human rights. In 1968, Martin Luther King Jr., an important civil rights activist, was shot and killed by racist James Earl Ray in Tennessee while supporting striking sanitation workers. This event was conservative because MLK was killed on the basis of his killer, not in favor of who he was or what he believed in. In 1987, Dr. Benjamin Carson, an African-American neurosurgeon, made medical history by separating Siamese twins in a 22-hour operation. This is liberal because it shows that African Americans are capable of carrying out complex and important tasks, just as white people could. And finally, in 2008, Barack Obama became the first African American president of the United States. This is liberal because Obama's election showed that over the years, America's citizens have become more accepting of letting people from different walks of life become president, regardless of their race. Now Emma will talk about women's rights.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm going to be talking about women's rights. Throughout the last 50 years, people have become more accepting of women and more liberal as an effect. In the 1960s, there was a reawakening of the feminist movements from the 1920s when women got the vote. It started with Betty Friedman, who wrote The Feminine Mystique, which described housewives' dissatisfaction of the narrow role imposed upon them. Friedman also started the National Organization for Women, or NOW, to end sexual discrimination. This is liberal because it allowed women to express themselves and gain more rights. In 1973, the court case Roe v. Wade established a woman's right to abortion. This is liberal because it increases women's rights. In the 1986 Mariner Savings Bank v. Vinson court case, they made sexual harassment illegal, which also increased women's rights from government. In another court case, Jackson v. Birmingham Board of Education, in which they prohibited discrimination based on sex. In 2017, there was a women's march that advocated women's rights. There were 3 million people. It was one of the largest, most peaceful protests in U.S. history. All of these events are liberal because they increase women's rights and acceptance toward them with government action. Of what we have learned, women's rights have increased, and so have liberalism, as people have become more accepting of them.
And African Americans have proved that they are just as important as white Americans.
We as a country have become more religiously tolerant now than we were 50 years ago.
And our questions are: how have increase of liberalism affected our society today?
And how has the increase of liberalism for civil rights for African Americans impacted society?
And how has the increase of liberalism
and conservatism changed America society as a whole?